Well, thank you very much for joining us today, Niki. Perhaps if you could just tell us what you do and where your company fits into the wide scheme of things.
Okay, well, Market Structure Partners is a niche consultancy specialising in advising people about capital markets infrastructure. So be it exchanges, clearinghouses, regulators, investment banks, high-frequency firms. We're very involved with all of those market participants in helping them understand and interpret regulation and think strategically about where the world is going.
Of course, you've been here pretty much across the entire day. You will be closing fairly soon. You did open it. What has so far that you've seen today been the real highlights?
Well, I think we've had lots of highlights today, actually, and we've had some really good quality panels. I think it's been really useful to have people here, both from the political environment in Brussels, as well as somebody here from the Commission, someone here from the FSA. So getting their insight, I think, at such a critical time has been very valuable for everybody. I think the level of concern around particular issues such as the OTF issue and really how that's being defined and how it involves principal trading or not, and I think around high frequency and how contentious Article 17.3, as it's becoming known very quickly, are probably the key topics that I think everybody will hope the Commission and the regulators have taken away as big issues for them. But I also think it's just been quite cathartic for people to even be able to talk about those things today on the various panels and in the sessions.
So what would you say are the key takeaways then from the regulations that particularly with MiFID coming in?
Well, I think people are saying that that there needs to be a lot more detail around much of the regulation that has been proposed. And that perhaps a lot of it has not really been thought out. I think somebody made a very valid point that perhaps many of the things, or several of the things I should say, that have come into MiFID 2 actually came in at a very late stage and were probably not part of the consultative process. And people are not happy about that because they spend a lot of time and effort in this consultative process and then feel they're not necessarily being heard. So I think the regulators will have taken away the fact that they need to think through a lot of these proposals much more carefully and that they're very broad brush at this point in time.
So I think one of the key things that people were talking about today is that perhaps the regulations are scapegoating to some degree on HFT.
Yes, it's quite bizarre really because, at one level they're actually scapegoating the banks, and a lot of this has been demonising the banks, and now we seem to be demonising the high-frequency firms. And actually the really ironic part of that is that high-frequency firms are very segregated principal trading firms, which is actually where the regulation is trying to push the banks towards in terms of segregating things out. So why are we demonising that structure? That doesn't make sense. And at the same time, the fact that we've now got this French tax being proposed on high frequency, it's quite scary as to what that might do to the liquidity in the market. And I don't think the regulators really understand the level of liquidity that is being provided by the high frequency firms, and it's quite noble of them to go out there and say everybody needs to make continuous prices, but actually it's a completely unrealistic concept.
And I know that Case Swinburne earlier on was saying that data quality has gone down since the introduction of MiFID, but then later on in one of the other panels they started saying, well, actually we disagree, it was actually better as a result of MiFID because there was no data quality, there was no data whatsoever before that. Who's right, or is it just a miscommunication?
No, I think actually the questions were not granular enough. I think the real answer is that pre-MiFID, domestically, people had a lot of high quality data that was maintained by one single exchange. So if you wanted pure domestic data, particularly in the UK, there was a very, very good set of data available. But actually, if you wanted to understand how cross-border trading was working, absolutely, there was nothing out there. MiFID has actually improved the transparency of that cross-border trading, but I think what you hear from a lot of the UK people is the level of detail that they used to get around their domestic trading is not now what they're getting around pan-European. So both sides are right, but actually one side is saying that their domestic trading data was actually very good pre-MiFID, and the other side is saying that actually now we've got much better transparency on cross-border trading that we didn't have before.
And in terms of the amount of data that people are after, consolidated tape has of course been another big issue, particularly as everyone was saying what they wanted was one centralised consolidated tape, and now it looks like it's going to be commercialised, and that could actually completely defeat the object of what people were calling out for in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think we did as part of Trade Tech Pulse, we've interviewed 60 buy-side firms, and without question, what everybody said they wanted the regulators to fix more than anything was a mandated consolidated tape, which was quite a strong answer, and clearly we're not getting that. I think one of the issues, and Case Wimburn said something this morning around the cost of data, and they want to see cost of data come down. And I think one of the issues is that market data is a monopoly. If an exchange owns that market data, there is no competition. The price formation has happened on that exchange, and it cannot be competed with by any other venue. So I think what they're trying to say is competition at the distribution level is right. And frankly, I'm not sure we're ever going to get there, but actually they're not addressing this issue around cost of data, and this commercialization is not going to make it any better. So I think that the regulators are actually barking up the wrong tree with that. And it's actually a competition issue.
Yeah. Do you think it'll actually in the process as we go through to the actual regulations, the directive coming in, is that something you think might end up being ironed out, or is it too early to tell?
I think I think the Commission is saying basically they don't want to fix this unless the industry can't fix it themselves. Frankly, they've got so many other things to do that they're probably not going to make this their first priority. So I don't think getting a mandated consolidated tape is going to happen in a hurry. Maybe the industry will fix it. Personally, I think there's too many vested interests afoot, and we haven't actually fixed this problem so far, so why anybody thinks we're going to fix it again in the next sort of 3 or 4 years, I'm not sure. We might improve the quality of data, but actually the other point that I want to make on that is the regulators haven't necessarily done their job to help that. Everybody's saying this is the industry's problem to fix, but the regulators could actually enforce a lot more around data standards already. We don't need MiFID II for that to happen.
Yeah, I think that's actually what a lot of people were saying. They actually, to some degree, we just need someone to crack the whip a little. It doesn't necessarily need a whole phone book worth of regulations to come.
Absolutely. So I think the regulators have also not done their job in this space.
So looking at OTFs, obviously that's been a major talking point today. And one of the big things that people seem to be picking up on is that by the introduction of the regulations, we're going to end up with just so many reasonably undefined trading venues that it's just going to make a complete management mess, and no one will be able to truly regulate it properly. Is that something you actually think will be the case?
Yes, I think we're going to end up with many more venues. I think right now, if an OTF gives people discretion over orders, everybody will be rushing to be an OTF and probably not an MTF. I'm not sure that's a desirable outcome either. I'm also questioning, are we moving trading venues too far into the broker area? Why we have a category that allows people to treat clients with discretion, and it's called being a broker. So why we need this OTF category, I'm not absolutely sure. I do sympathise with some of the thoughts behind it in terms of being clearer about where your trading's been done, but I think there's better ways to go about that.
So finally, I just wanted to ask you again about the French tax on HFT. First of all, how on earth are they going to define what categorises that tax, and is it really going to be HFT, or is it simply going to be all electronic traders?
Well, the tax they're proposing is on anybody who cancels over a certain number of orders or a proportion of orders. So that is naturally going to be most likely to be high frequency. Not necessarily. They haven't said we just want to tax high frequency. They're saying we're taxing anybody who is going to be cancelling a greater proportion of orders than X. I think 50%, but I'm not absolutely sure that's right. So they're hoping to capture the high frequency in that. But personally, I think that's very detrimental for a market. I think they are going to lose liquidity, spreads will widen. It's actually not going to benefit the end investor.
So just to wind things up, is it really all doom and gloom, or is there potentially a light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, I think change always brings opportunity. And so somewhere in there will be some silver lining where some people will take advantage of the opportunities. I think there is a lot of concern and realistic concern about where this is going to take the market, and actually whether it's really going to be good for the end investor. So, the pessimism that we have felt in the room today is is probably quite realistic. You know, it's hard to say. My biggest concern actually is that the regulators don't even have enough resources to police everything that is being suggested. Don't get me wrong, I think they should be doing a job, they need to be policing stuff, but really they're just taking on so much that I think it will be impossible for them to police, and it's going to become a very, very complex environment that we're dealing with.
Well, it'll certainly be interesting to see how events unfold in the next, coming years, I suppose. Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Pleasure.